All right, welcome. So this video is exercise is medicine, healing your body through movement. This video is going to cover why sedation is the enemy of health and longevity, and why exercise is actually one of the most effective methods for us to heal our body. This isn't a very often talked about topic. The idea that exercise is a form of medicine, that exercise can actually heal your body. But in reality, exercise is actually one of the most effective forms of medicine, one of the most effective ways for us to heal our body. Our bodies need and require movement. The nuance here is that we're not talking about problems that would exist without sedation or that would exist with exercise. We're simply talking about the fact that most of our modern health conditions that we face as human beings nowadays are actually caused by our lack of exercise, by our lack of movement, and by our sedentary lifestyles. And so with that being said, exercise can actually be the most effective way to battle most of these health conditions that we face. So if you do enjoy this video as you're watching, you can go ahead and leave a like and also comment down below and let me know anything you may learn watching the video, anything valuable you may take away from this video. I always love to read your key points and your summaries of the videos. So without further ado, sedation is killing you. So when we are not growing, when we are not moving, when we are not evolving, we are dying. We never stay exactly where we're at, right? You never stay perfectly still, or still may be the wrong word, but you never stay perfectly in the position you are in life. You are always either growing or you are regressing and dying as a result. And the reason that I say this is because though you may not notice, every time you stop making progress in a positive direction, you slowly begin to regress and you slowly begin to devolve in such a way that is progressing you towards death. A perfect example of this is most of the time when we retire as human beings and we stop doing things, we become irritable. We become sadistic, we become negative, and we become aggressive, right? We build this tension, and a lot of times we end up slowly moving towards death. A lot of older people are facing chronic inflammation, brain conditions, right? Physical conditions. But this is all actually caused by the sedentary lifestyle. This is all caused by the fact that we're no longer progressing. A lot of the inflammation that we face as human beings, a lot of the problems that present ourselves as far as laziness, energy levels, motivation, discipline, all of them come from the fact that we're living a sedentary and comfortable lifestyle. And the reason that this is killing us is because we as human beings need to move, we need to be active, we need to be growing. If we're not active, if we're not growing, if we're not progressing in some capacity, then we will slowly die. That is how our bodies work, right? We can never just stay right where we're at. You will always regress if you do not focus on progress. So that gets us into the secret that Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. So we're not here about to get into conspiracies, but the secret that Big Pharma does not want you to know is the simple fact that lifestyle, exercise, and diet, specifically diet and nutrition, but also exercise and lifestyle, are actually the biggest influences in our health and our state of health, right? So the problem is that you don't get an immediate fix from these things. These things are not an instant fix, and therefore it's very hard to make money off of them, right? The thing that people pay for is typically an easy fix, right? People want to pay for medications because they are easy, they are simple, and they get rid of the symptom. But if we want to actually heal, if we want to actually become healthy and stay that way, right? Solve the problem at the root, we actually need to address the lifestyle problems and the lifestyle flaws that are causing this specific health condition. So for example, dementia is actually caused by not using your brain for too long, right? As you get old, the less you are working on things, the less you are actively using your brain, the more it decays, and eventually it gets to a point where you can no longer bridge certain gaps in your brain, leaving gaps in your memory, gaps in your awareness. But this can be fixed simply by reading books. This can be fixed simply by continuing to learn, continuing to use your brain, doing some form of cognitively demanding work, All of this will build our skills, build our brain's ability to think and comprehend things, and therefore we would be preventing things like dementia and Alzheimer's. Inflammation is another very big cause of most of our adverse health conditions as human beings. But the simple fix to this is exercise and proper nutrition. Improper eating and improper diet is the main cause of inflammation. So if we can remove the inflammatory foods within our diet, seed oils, breads and pastas, and anything that is unnatural, anything that is not a whole food ingredient, or anything that is not naturally created for food as food, all of these things will cause inflammation. These are what we call inflammatory, highly inflammatory foods. When we eat these consistently in our diet, any of us who eat cheeseburgers on a regular, any of us who eat fries on a regular, you're already there. You already have all the seed oils, all the sugar, all the breads. Everything bad in our diet is right there for you. All right, sugar is heavily inflammatory. Breads are very inflammatory as well, and they're just bad for our gut overall, so they damage our ability to absorb and consume other nutrients. And then seed oils are horrible for our system, terrible for us. I don't really have to get into that. I feel like a lot of people understand the negatives of seed oils, but the main one here is that it is a highly inflammatory food, and that will cause inflammation over time. And if we sustain chronic inflammation, we get problems like knee pain, back pain, we get gut health issues, we get brain health issues. All right, so do you see the trend? The trend is that there are lifestyle changes that can be made earlier on that can cause us to never even have to deal with these symptoms later down the line, because they are caused by sustained improper health. And so the way that we heal our bodies is actually through exercise and nutrition. We simply need to exercise enough and get the right kind of nutrition, the right kind of food, and that way we can completely overcome and beat most of these adverse health conditions. So how do we heal our body through movement and exercise? The main thing we want to understand is that our bodies are in optimal health when we are active, when we are exercising. When our blood is flowing, our heart is pumping, and our brain is active, our body is moving. This is our optimal state as a human being. So by simply walking every day, running every day, biking every day, lifting on a regular basis, what we can do is we can actually get ourselves to a place where our body is more capable of functioning on a basic level. For example, our immune system, when our immune system is compromised, that is when we are susceptible to sicknesses. That is when we are susceptible to energy issues and dips, right? This is when we are susceptible to bacteria and infection. But when we optimize the immune system to work at its optimal function, which happens when we get proper exercise and nutrition, then the immune system can fight off these diseases, fight off these viruses, fight off this bacteria way faster, and therefore we don't struggle as much through things like sickness. This is something that I can vouch for. Throughout my entire life, there was one period of time where I would get sick consistently, and if I did get sick, it would actually last a while. And that period of my life was the least active that I was. So, to explain, most of my life, I would never get sick. My whole family would get violently sick from whatever disease hit us at the time. Meanwhile, I would be the only one to not get it. And if there were times where I would get sick, it would be because, I was either eating incorrectly or I wasn't as active, but I would always get over that sickness very fast. Then I entered a period of my life where I did actually get sick a couple of times, and it lasted a very long period of time. But as soon as I got back into exercising consistently, this is when I really started to get into the gym, and I started to eat correctly. I started to eat a lot healthier. During this period of time, I then did not get sick again. And ever since that point, ever since I started exercising consistently again and eating properly, I haven't gotten truly sick. So it is less about healing our body through exercise and more about optimizing it to work at proper function. So muscle repair and rebuilding. A lot of people, when they get injuries, think that complete rest is what they need. And yes, rest is important. I'm not dissing on rest after an injury. But the key is that if you do not move or rebuild that muscle, you won't come back as strong as you started. And this is the issue. A lot of athletes face injuries But then to heal, they stop training, they stop exercising, and then when they come back, let's say you had a knee injury, your knee is actually worse off, weaker than it was before you got the injury. So now you're actually more susceptible to that injury. Now, this is a problem because if you're an athlete and you're constantly training, constantly competing, you don't really have a lot of time to regulate and rebuild that knee or rebuild your skills from scratch in order to make sure that you actually have the strength and functionality to do it. Meaning it's very difficult to come back from an injury with a weaker knee and get right back to it without sustaining another knee injury. Now, the way that I would say you should prevent this, right? The way that I would explain preventing this is by simply observing that when you get an injury, this doesn't mean you can stop using the muscle. If you have a broken leg, obviously I'm not telling you to go and do squats. But if you had a broken knee, for example, or let's say you had a hurt arm, I would tell you to continue to do some form of exercise. Continue to do something that will help you to stay active, stay moving, and keep yourself fit and healthy throughout this process. But also, let's say you broke your knee. Instead of just doing absolutely nothing with your knee this whole time, what I would recommend is if you're able to walk as much as possible. And obviously with a broken knee, this is very difficult. But what I would say is walk as much as possible, do upper body resistance exercises, etc. But as soon as that knee heals enough that you can now walk on it, walk as consistently as possible, even if it hurts. Because the point is that we now need to rebuild strength in this area. We now need to rebuild this muscle. To not move at all would cause us to continue going through the atrophy that is causing us to have more weakness in the knee. But by getting active as soon as we can and slowly but surely rebuilding strength and conditioning that specific muscle group, we can build our strength back to where it was before. And ideally, we increase it to better than it was when we started. Because if we got a knee injury, that means our knees were too weak to sustain the activity. Yes, you may have, if you're a snowboarder, you may have made a mistake and fallen. Or if you're a soccer player, you may have made a mistake and caused that injury. But the overarching problem is that your knee was susceptible to that injury because of that form of stressor. And if you want to go back to competing, you have to be prepared to be able to take on that specific stressor. So what I would say is take an injury as an opportunity to strengthen that area further than it was before so that you don't end up getting injured again. Now, let's talk about mental health and exercise, because mental health is actually very, very important. And exercise is one of the key components in having good mental health. So when we exercise, we are processing and decompressing nervous energy. This nervous energy and this nervous tension is a lot of what causes our overthinking. Our brain is able to process and decompress everything that is overwhelming it when we exercise. So by exercising consistently, we give ourselves a proper outlet for all of this energy, therefore not leaving it in the brain and causing us to continue overthinking. This overthinking is what causes poor mental health. Well, rather, poor mental health causes the overthinking. But when we exercise consistently and we start to heal our body and we start to make ourselves healthy and fit, we increase our blood flow, we increase our nutritional intake, because by exercising more, we start to care more about diet. So you increase your nutritional intake, you're now in a position where your brain is healthier than it was before, even though you're not working on your brain. There is also a direct correlation between your body's health and your brain's health. So by making yourself more healthy physically, you will increase your mental health as well. So next thing is nervous system regulation and energy levels. Exercise is nice because although it seems as though it would take more energy to do it, when you exercise consistently, your body actually compensates by increasing your energy levels. So you actually have more energy throughout the day because you're exercising consistently, even though you're technically using more energy to exercise. And so this is kind of a paradox where the more you do things, the more active you are, the more energy you use, the more energy you have available to continue using. And when you are sedentary, when you are still, when you don't do much with your life, your body and brain compensate by not giving you so much energy. Because if you had all this energy to work and train, but you sit around and watch TV all day, well, you're going to be very tense. So your body compensates by making sure that it downregulates the energy moving through your nervous system to compensate for the lifestyle that you have. And if you're exercising more, it'll do the same by upregulating energy in the nervous system to compensate for the lifestyle you have. The next thing is nervous system regulation. When we have too much energy in the nervous system, when we're too tense, right? When we have too much overwhelm in our bodies, we need an outlet. This nervous energy needs an outlet. Anxiety needs an outlet. Anxiety is just trapped nervous energy. Emotions are trapped nervous energy. So if we simply move this energy by exercising, we can begin to train ourselves to regulate our nervous system. We can upregulate and downregulate the amount of energy we're producing, the amount of heat that we're producing in our bodies based on what we're doing, which gives us a lot more control over how calm we are in stressful situations, or how much we can increase our energy and excitement when we need access to good energy. So then the last thing here is proper recovery to prevent injury and muscle dysfunction. Recovery includes things like stretching, yoga, and any form of like ice bath, cold therapy, heat therapy, sauna. All of these things are considered recovery. When we are training consistently, we need proper recovery tools. Like I said, this includes yoga, stretching, cold therapy, and sauna. But why are they so important? Why is recovery so important? A lot of people diss on stretching, but in reality, why is stretching so important? Why is it so valuable? It is so valuable because when we have too much tension, we don't have full muscle function. When we have too much tension, we don't have a full range of motion. Meaning, when we're lifting, for example, we're more prone to injury when we have less strength and a full range of motion than if we were to stretch consistently and do yoga consistently to build both strength and length. We need our muscles to be able to lengthen fully and have full strength in the complete range of motion. That's why stretching and recovery is so important in exercise, because without it, we are more prone to injury. I have a friend who I have talked about on the channel once, but he's one of my closer friends, and I used to make fun of him, but also it was just a funny thing to me to see. But he was a big gym guy, and he was actually the person who got me into the gym. But he was a big gym guy, and our senior year, he was really going hard in the gym. But in gym class, in phys ed or whatever you call it, we're playing kickball, and I noticed when he runs, he's basically like completely stiff. And I asked him kind of as like a joke, I'm like, bro, do you stretch at all? He's like, oh, hell no, no stretching. But he goes to the gym twice a day, and he's consistent in the gym. So when you are consistent working out and training and building your muscles, it's important and good to make sure that you are also stretching to counter. Because yes, you want to build strength, yes, you want to build muscle, but you also need to counter. You need to build mobility, flexibility, and strength within a full range of motion. So that's why it's so important to include recovery in your routines, because without it, we are more prone to injury. And muscle dysfunction is something not a lot of people talk about. If we don't have full range of motion and we are an athlete, we can't actually use our muscles to the fullest. We can't use certain muscles if we're not able to access strength within a full range of motion. Let's say you are a soccer player and you're running, but you can't open your legs fully. Let's say your hips are tight, and so you can't reach your leg as far in front of you as the next person. What's going to happen is that person's going to beat you because they have a full range of motion. They have strength and a longer range of motion. Their stride is longer because they have the flexibility to do it. If you don't have the flexibility, you are limiting your capacity for growth. A lot of athletes who plateau because they do not have proper recovery, allowing them to continue to progress. Because, like I said, they don't have full muscle function. So it's very important to have recovery so that you can make sure that your muscles are not just building in strength, but building in functionality. So that is all I have for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. If you want to check out my TikTok and my Instagram, both of those are linked in the description. All of the videos I make on YouTube are clipped up and put onto TikTok, and then I also upload the same ones on Instagram. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can go check that out. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Check out my next video either here or here. But yeah, that's all I have. I'm out of here. Peace.